Hi everyone, it's me, and today's video is on early cinema before the studio system era, which actually dominated cinema as it became to be known today in terms of how the media business is run, how the film industry functioned and operated through monopolies and oligopolies and all those things. But with this presentation, it's all about from the 1890s to the early 1920s in terms of how the film industry pioneered, which laid the foundations for modern day filmmaking, with certain techniques being used today which came from the early parts of the film industry as well. So this is before Hollywood dominated, during the golden age of the cinema, which became to be known as the studio system. But let's get into the presentation now. So in terms of where the roots of the moving pictures came from, so shadow puppetry was a form of ancient storytelling, part of ancient storytelling traditions, which dated back to China's Han dynasty. So the roots of storytelling already has its roots from the roots of ancient storytelling has already been proven that it's from China, and it's very old and it's still incorporated now, but in a way that we don't expect it to do. Like, we use AI and we use like technology as a way of forming our own stories, even though back then it was much different, but it still had incorporated uses of moving image as well, but not in the sense that we have in terms of the use of technology. The Renaissance device projecting images have small apertures because the size of the lens is pretty small and you won't be able to see a lot. You could see, but you have to look very closely with those kind of lenses. Magic lanterns have stained glass paintings which look incredible, really. And optical toys that create the illusion of movement, which some people would class it as moving image or stop motion, like animation for example, but I would call it moving image still, so because of how it was created for images to move. So the invention of moving pictures, so the groundbreaking sequence, so Muybridge's experiment settled the debate whether all four hooves leave the ground. So he's the one who created the moving image of the horse being ridden, and it's like a revolving image. You know, nowadays when you get you still see it now, like people sometimes use paper, draw pictures and they start flicking through the book, that sort of thing. If you've seen images of it online, but I think it's been copyright protected, so people may not have access to it. So the first projection converted still images into moving pictures for audiences to see. So it's now becoming, the technology's there, they advanced it, and made it happen. Because it's from the experiment that the inventor of the horse revolving animation, kind of stop motion sort of thing, it happens from that. So I would say that's where moving image most likely invented, but I think it could be much earlier than that. So public reception. So in terms of how audiences perceived moving images, they were very surprised and shocked that these things could be made. So basically, technology has become very lifelike for a lot of people. So, which I'll get into in a moment or so, as this video is so the Lumiere brothers, I think they're like they set the foundation of what cinema is, basically. So they both combined the camera, printer and projector as one portable device, and they both made films together and documented real life stuff, so they could be considered the first filmmakers in some way. So, and they did this film called Workers Leaving the Factory, so it's showing everyday life in the city of Lyon, which is in France. And you will see there's a film of it. I think it should be on YouTube. It's just people going inside and outside the factory, getting on with their lives, working as well. It's just simple. It was simple about. So the public sensation. So this film about the train arriving sent shockwaves to many different audiences. Because it was so. Prior to cinema, it is theatre. Because theatre, you just see. It's just a stage, and you see the actual person on stage, or people, or however you want to perceive it. But when it came to cinema, in the big screen, the projectors there, at the back, and a lot of people were shocked that that train is actually. They felt it was real. And they didn't know how to react. They were just shocked. Like some sort of technology was there. So that's had a global impact on how cinematographers worldwide spread the medium. So they had a very big impact in terms of cinema itself, and how we view our films to this day. But nowadays, no one gets shook. But I think there is now levels of that we do get 3D cinema, 4D, 5D, all those other ones. So and there's this director, he's very influential. It's called Georges Méliès. He's a magician. So he started out as a stage magician and he became a filmmaker much later on. And his stage illusion was the very thing that blew a lot of audiences away, because he was able to turn that into a film. It looked like he must have edited it out of somewhere, but it didn't seem to be the case. And plus, people went to see his works. I think he was the first director he made the first ever sci-fi film, if you want to know the facts about him. And there's been a film about him called Hugo, which is a very good film, and it documented who he is as a filmmaker, who he is as a person and a filmmaker, and how he changed cinema, the way we view our films, like special effects, for example. He done all of that by himself. As a creative, it takes a lot of effort and time to do all this set stuff, you know. And nowadays, people still incorporate these things, but it's more advanced because the technology is much more digital now. So the narrative innovation. So he's created these fantastical stories, which gripped a lot of people during that time. A lot of cinema goers were into his films as well. That Voyage to the Moon, I think, like I said before, it was the first sci-fi. It was the first sci-fi film to ever be made. So he made more dramas than documenting actual reality, like the Lumiere brothers did with their workers leaving the factory in the train film, which sent a lot of people outside to the cinema. People ran away from the screen, basically. And he was, like I said, as I pointed out, he was a pioneer in terms of VFX, visual effects. So using stop motion, dissolves and multiple exposures to create the sense of magic and unreal, like fantasy. It's like if someone disappeared from, like they transported from one place to the other, or a random person just magically appears. He would have been that person that created that. But I think Hugo, I think it's not accurate as a film though, even though it did talk about his life, and some of his films actually got lost during the First World War. So, but he's a very good person to look into. So film production and exhibition grows. So simple productions were only a minute long, and the camera position was stationary, so not a lot of panning and tilting and shaking of the camera was used to create. It's just to keep things simple. I think maybe because of how it was made during that time, and film was actually filmed on a small like film material thing. It's like a plastic film that you get with old cameras. But it's only recently, like during the late 90s, that everything was digital. But a lot of people don't transition that quick. Maybe they're so used to filming on film. Then when it came down to digital's much more easier. But apparently it does require a lot of backing up, basically. You have to back up your footage. You still need to back up film as well. I think film is easier to back up than like digital, because digital you need an SD card and a USB as well. Or you could back it on the cloud, but the cloud would be too big if you backed it up on the cloud. So longer films were like multi-reel feature films began appearing in 1910. So basically prior to 1910, the films weren't left. I think they just edited it as the film was made. So each short film became part of one clip. Because remember, editing was much different back then as well. like post-production as we know now. It's more digital. It's all digital. But this, they have to cut their film, like unedited. Edit parts that they don't want, and they sew the film in. I think one time someone mentioned that I remember that women had to sew. It's like editing was for women because it reminds them of sewing. It's a bit of a sexist remark for someone to really be saying that. Nickelodeon, so small storefront theatres charged 5 cents for admissions. So basically Nickelodeon's this machine where you could actually watch different clips of films and stuff. And I can't remember exactly, but you get this large box and you choose a film, I think. You put the money in and you choose the film you want to watch, I think. And then it plays the film for you. The box plays the film for you. So a lot of Americans, or a lot of people, by 1907, so millions attended Nickelodeons weekly across America. So basically, cinema has grown in such many proportions in ways that they didn't really think at the time. So it's amazing that we came a long way from this. But I think people need to understand that it's still used, some elements of it's still used now. So the key innovators beyond France. So Thomas Edison, although I would like to argue from researching based on when I was creating quizzes from before, like the things that he's invented could be disputed per se. So like the light bulb, or the fact he invented electricity, or so forth. So he developed the kinetoscope, peephole viewer, and he built Black Maria. So it's America's first film studio. I think he built it in 1903 or 04, one of those years. So he did invent the camera as well, but that's what someone said. But I think it's someone else who actually did that. He actually invented the camera. It was someone called Louis Leprince. He actually did invent camera. And there was another guy, can't remember, he's also French. He took the first photograph. I think that was in 1876, if I'm not mistaken. Because I remember watching a video about it like a while back. So he did find, apart from those names, Thomas Edison did form the Motion Pictures Patents Company. So it gives him rights to protect every motion picture there is, basically. Like, if it's patented, it means like they have rights and no one can steal or take away, because it's your property, really. So Alice Guy Blanche, so she's the first female director, and she's the first director to actually include a black cast in her films, even though she's white. The director's white, but she included an all-black cast in Hollywood films, which is mad for someone. She's quite a revolutionary, so if you look into her, you will find out extraordinary things she has done. in her filmmaking career. So she created over 1,000 films. I feel like that is mostly short films, because if you create 1,000 films, nowadays it's not that possible to make that many films. To have that many films in your resume, really, so, or in the CV, because it takes time, and a lot of times you don't get the money or the funding that you're after. And she's also, I think she's the first woman to even find her own film production, called Solax Studios in 1910. So she left France for America. I think she left her husband as well, because they weren't together at that point. So, and she started making films. So, yeah. And Robert W. Paul, so he created Britain's first film projector, and he built England's first film studio. I'm guessing that was in Leeds, because Leeds is where the first film was ever made. The first ever moving film. I'm serious. I'm not really lying about that. I can't remember the year. I think it's in the 1800s. I can't remember the exact year though. I think it's I was 1870s or 1880s. And it was set in Leeds, and there was people going out in the garden, so that was the film. So he pioneered different camera techniques as well, like panning and tilting, and all those, maybe panning and the simple ones like panning, and maybe panning up or down as camera techniques, and tilting or over, like zooming in, out. Those other, I would say, would have been possible during those times. So the Hollywood emergence. So film production company percentage, so a lot more Hollywood films were made than anywhere else, because Hollywood is just more facilities, I would say, and it's easier to create films, and the studios are much bigger as well, especially if you want to make a film that's more set in a fictional land or something, and then going on, like, you want to create the set more, they want to create the set more than actually going to a real life location, which costs a lot more money as well. So it's shorter with distances and diverse shooting locations. So let's say if you want to, rather than go to New York, you build New York, basically. That's what this is about. So the world of silent film. Yeah, silent film was very popular. And the first narrative film to ever come out happened in 1903. It's called The Great Train Robbery, and it introduced storytelling techniques in the film. So that film had a narrative, and people were able to go along with it. I think it was quite well received, but people were a bit dubious during those times, because, you know, they weren't really used to that sort of thing. But in cinemas, they had people playing the piano while the film is played, because it's a silent film, so you won't be able to hear anything, and no one's really talking in the film. And the first blockbuster is called Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith, and it ran for like 3 hours, because I remember one time we was talking about it in class. It was a university lecture, And a student was saying that he tried watching the film. It was a very long film. It was over 3 hours long. It's insane how someone's able to make. Because back then, films used to be longer as well, though. And they just made multiple short. You can make multiple short films and turn into a feature. It can be possible. So it's 10k star salaries. So a lot of stars back then who are very popular within the film industry, or A-list Hollywood celebrities, they earned over 10k each for their salaries. Like I said, there's live musicians and intertitles which are the words that helped create dialogue and context between scenes, and live musicians accompanied screens that are in larger theatres. So there's the early film stars like Florence Lawrence and Mary Pickford. So they achieved fame through those films in the silent era, and Charlie Chaplin as well. So they spanned from many different genres, such as comedy, drama, epics, which are like long biblical films, like Ben-Hur, for example. That's one, and Gladiator, for example, and adventure films and swashbuckling films. So, moving on from that, so the legacy of early cinema has a very massive impact in terms of cinema becoming a defining art form of the 20th century. So technical foundations through editing, cinematography and special effects basics has helped the industry grow quite a lot. It came a long way, but it's still incorporated now. And the industry framework that involved the business models that evolved into the studio system was implemented as well, and how from the development stage on when the idea is first birthed from to the exhibition phase or distribution phases where the film is premiered on the big screen and people are coming to pay money to come see your film. So by the 1920s, the pioneering era gave way to more structured filmmaking. So it was more structured, more rigid in terms of how everything's made, and everything's been run by because the studio system was run by executive producers, and the producer had more of control of what projects and what films should be made, basically. And it did restrict creative freedom as well. And early cinema experimentation, innovation, which continues to influence filmmakers today, influenced me in some ways as well, because I'm a filmmaker too, so that's helped me as well. Like those simple basic editing cinematography techniques that was used helped with my own productions as well. And the language of film was born from this whole thing. So hope you learned something from this video. If you have, please like, share, subscribe, And do comment on more videos if you want to see more presentations like this. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.